Hello, friends, and welcome to Men with Funny Heads, a podcast that normally talks about specific sci-fi TV shows or movies, but this time is doing something far more pointless. But before we get into that, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Wib, and I'm joined by Longfang.
Hi, everyone. This is the pointless episode.
This is the pointless, silly episode. But how are you doing today?
I am more or less alive. We'll say that.
Yeah. Over the weekend before recording this, you streamed, 19 hours of Halo?
Something like 19 hours, yeah. If that improves my sci-fi cred any, that'd be great. I decided to do a weekend marathon of Halo's Reach through 3 in the run-up for Halo 4 coming out on PC tomorrow. The 17th, that would be.
Yeah, that's a lot of Halos, it has to be said.
It really is a lot of Halo, and some of those games were longer than I thought they were.
Yeah, because some of them are relatively short if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, like 3 is really short. That took no time. 2 took a while. And 1, because it's a old-ass first-person shooter, took a fucking while.
It's a whole thing. But anyway, we're going to move on from the Halo because we're going to talk a lot about Star Trek.
Everyone loves it.
Yeah, so we mentioned this. I think the idea came from the episode we did on Dalek. I think,
God,
where we just waffled for like 20 minutes on the end of that episode.
You mean we had a normal conversation that we would have?
Yeah, but from that sort of grew the idea that we were going to do for the 10th episode of Men with Funny Heads. We were just going to have a nice kind of chill podcast episode where we just talk about fictional spaceships that we thought were cool. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be talking about the democratically chosen best Star Trek ships.
And I'm just going to say, democracy has failed us.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Now, what we could have done is we could have spent like 3 days arguing with each other about what ships to pick and like make a top 10 or something like. Mm-hmm. And I think we would have been able to come up with like one that we could, broadly speaking, agree on because
totally.
there's certain ones that we both love, even if you will never accept my love of our Lord and Savior, the Miranda class.
I just want to state for the record now, my hatred of the Miranda class is more or less a bit. I do like that ship. Sorry to just drop the fucking kayfabe of it, but I actually do like the ship. It's just really funny to be like, no, fuck that ship. Khan had that ship. Oh, he's a dick. Yeah,
Yeah. But what we decided to do instead was we would do this democratically. And we put a series of polls on Twitter allowing people to vote on them. And this went in like progressive brackets. Mm-hmm. To narrow it down to a smaller portion of ships. And so we eventually did get a winner. Now, this selection of ships was, it was very much like the real democracies that we live under, because although people could vote however which way they wanted, the options that they could pick were already decided for them.
Yep. We did that.
Which was by us. So what we did was we picked 32 ships from Star Trek. Now, this was mostly going to be Federation ships, mostly just because there's more of them.
Yeah. And they get more screen time. Most of them get more screen time than, say, a Breen warship or something like that.
Yeah, literally there are more ship types that have had the name Enterprise than there are ship types in the entirety of, like, the Cardassian fleet.
Yeah.
And this is just common for most of them. Like, if you get into expanded universe stuff, then yeah, there's a lot more. But we stuck ourselves to stuff that had been on screen. Mm-hmm. So we didn't
none of your memory beta shite here.
Yes. We stuck away from that. So we picked 32 ships. Which I'll read. We'll tell you what all of them were, but we won't go into detail on all of them because this podcast will be 42 hours long if we did that.
I know some people would love that, but please no, I'm tired today.
Yes. So the initial bracket was, 32 ships and just groups of 4 that all got voted through, and that left us with 8 at the end. Mm-hmm. Well, 8, which we then put in head-to-heads against each other. So that left us with 4, and then those 4 went into one poll, and then we were able to pick the top 4 ships. Now, I'm just going to quickly go through the 32, of those 32, the ones that did not get through that first round. So these are the ones we won't really be talking about. And there are some upsets in here because we did randomly pick what went into what brackets. So there were some brackets that were...
The deck was really stacked against some of these ships.
Yeah, so like for example, there was one bracket that was the Constitution, the Antares type, the Galaxy class, and the Excelsior class. That's a rough one for like that. That's putting a few big ones against each other
for sure.
And then
the Antares type. Okay, that's a fun one, but having the Connie, the Excelsior and the Galaxy in one bracket is mental.
Because that means only one can get through. So it means that, it does... There's obviously... It's difficult to make a perfect democracy, but, we tried, and we failed, but at least we tried.
We thought about, should we maybe change that bracket? We went, no, it's fine. It's randomised. We don't want to have our, biases showing. Yeah. Well, we don't want our biases in this.
Yeah, we literally use a random number generator to, pick this. So I'll go through the ones that didn't get through. That was the Romulan Bird of Prey, the Akira class. Very sad about the Akira class not getting any further. I love the Akira class. The Olympic class, the Nebula class, the Steamrunner class, the Constellation class, the Breen warship, the Oberth class, the Miranda class, hallowed be its name. The Constitution class, really surprised about the Constitution not getting through.
It was up against the Galaxy. And the Excelsior. Oh my god, that's a nasty bracket.
Yeah. And then, the Antares type, the Excelsior class, the Jaeger type, which is the weird kit bash between a Marquis Raider and an Intrepid class.
We had to put it in. It's so fun.
Yeah. The Crossfield class, which is what Discovery is, because we made sure that every hero ship was in there.
Yep.
So, the Kaplan F-17 speed freighter, which is the La Sirena from Picard.
Which I've just noticed now is in Van Halen colours.
Yes, it is. I don't know if that's intentional. I presume it is, because it would be too on the nose if it wasn't.
It has to be, because it's got the fucking the white stripes on it. Done in that sort of crossed up weird pattern.
Then we have the NX class, the Enterprise. The Nova class, another one that I really like that didn't get very far.
Yeah,
which is the Equinox from Voyager. I just always liked it. It's like a replacement for the Oberth. I think is canonically sort of what the new ship feels of,
a science vessel.
A small science vessel. But it looks. Even though I do like the Oberth for just being weird.
Yeah, that's why I like it as well. It's so fucking odd looking.
The Nova is just... I really like the Nova.
The Nova is... it takes some of the stuff I love from the Sovereign and makes a neat little ship out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Centaur class, which is a weird Excelsior class variant that doesn't get much screen time, but I've always liked. The Klingon D7 cruiser, the classic sadly being knocked out.
Yeah.
Ferengi Decora class Marauder, which is, the Ferengi ship.
Yep.
A Jem'Hadar fighter. We picked the fighter rather than any of the other ones because that's the most iconic
You
one.
see the fighter the most.
Yeah.
And it's a rad design.
The Sovereign class, big upset there that the Sovereign class went out. The Enterprise E is one of my favourite ship designs in Star Trek, and that got knocked out in the first round. Very upset by that.
Yeah.
I can't spend all the time talking about how it got, over the course of its movies, its design got tweaked every single fucking time. And
it generally got better each time.
Yeah. There's also the New Orleans class, which is the one that has highlighter pens as missile pods on it.
Yep. That's the reason we picked it.
Yes, and the California class, which is what its name's fallen out of my head now. The ship from the lower decks, anyway.
Yeah.
Which looks like shit, but it's supposed to kind of look like shit, and it is a hero ship, so it would be rude to not include it.
I do have to be honest. I kind of like the fact that it has like ambassador class style nacelles on it.
Because it's supposed to be like a modern ship, but it's just like the shit tier of it.
It's modern ship in the way of like, we have this stuff lying around in the shipyard. What can we make out of it? You know?
Like part of me wishes they'd have just made it be like a Miranda or something, like one that's been like 100 years old and is falling apart,
or like has weird fucking upgrades to it, like nacelles that don't suit it or something.
Yeah, because they could have done something like that, but I understand they wanted to have something that is
maybe a bit more comedic looking.
Well, I think it's more to make it its own thing, because if it's a Miranda class, then it's just another Miranda class of the type that were murdered in the hundreds during the Dominion War.
Yep.
And so that would be a bit of I can understand them doing that. Mm-hmm. So the information that we've got for this one, I don't know where you got any information that you got from, but I got nearly all of mine from Memory Alpha.
Mine will be from it's all from my memory, but it's all from plumbing Memory Alpha like a motherfucker.
Because the Memory Alpha wiki is amazing, and
scary.
Everyone who's done work there, I tip my hat to you. I will go and buy a hat because I'm not a hat person, and I will tip it to you because that wiki is fucking amazing.
Yep.
And if you are watching this on YouTube, from this point on, we'll be putting up a picture of the ship that we're talking about when we talk about it. Mm-hmm. But if you're watching it, listening to it, just as a regular podcast, don't worry about it. All you're missing out is a picture of 8 fictional starships. Yeah. You can probably remember what they are, because all the ones that got through are pretty well-known ones.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, have you got anything to say before we get into the meat of this?
Honestly, I'm really surprised that... Well, no, I'm not surprised that the Constitution and the Excelsior lost to the Galaxy, because for, like, people at our age, the Galaxy class is Star Trek. Like, that's the ship they think of. I'm like, I get it, but also the refit Constitution's so pretty.
It is. I do really like the refit one. And I'm like, I've mentioned this before. I'm a really big fan of the never used Phase 2 version. We have had many a conversation about the Phase 2 Enterprise and how cool it is, and how we want a model of it and we can't get one. I mean, you can get them now. Eagle Moss did do one, but
it's US only, isn't it, or something ridiculous?
Yeah, it's kind of a pain in the ass to get over here. They've also done versions of like the prototype ambassador and things like that. They've done tons of models of.
Was it Jeffries that did that? I can't remember now.
It was, because I've actually have this in my. Oh no, shit! I don't have it in my notes. Oh fuck.
It's fine.
It's not a Matt Jeffries. I think it's a Probert one.
Probert. That was the one. I'm sorry. Got my names mixed up.
Maybe.
It's one of the two of them.
I might be wrong there.
It came about from like concepts for the Enterprise D.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
but yeah. So it was. There was some that it was going to be tricky for things to get through on.
And then there's some things that got through that I'm still mad about.
Yes, we'll be getting to that one first. And the funny thing is, of course, that I think that this system did mean that for the top one, for the number one, I actually am like totally fine with it.
Yeah.
But getting there, it is a bit rough at times, just because the random nature of the brackets.
I agree.
But this is democracy in action. And I hope everyone enjoys this, because this is a weird episode. And it's one of those things where I'm like, this is either going to be something people really enjoy, or people are going to go, please never do this again. Yeah. Let us know in the comments whether this is a good idea, or if this is something that we should never do again and we should forget about. This can be the...
Okay. Well,
this can be the Star Trek animated series of the podcast, as in it gets decanonized near instantly, and it's only later on that we start to acknowledge that it maybe existed once enough time has passed that we don't have to think about it.
Yep. No, like, to be, like, let's be real. People around us that listen to this or watch Star Trek will love this shit.
Well, I mean, there was I was talking to you about this before we started recording, but in the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, just to date this podcast to exactly when it was recorded, there was a bit where Discovery pulls into a large area full of futuristic Federation ships, and they're all gushing. Like, the crew is on the bridge gushing about all these new ships, and I love that because that was like, no, that's what it's like to talk to other Star Trek fans about Star Trek ships.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah.
And I just love that. It was a little touch that just made me smile. That is actually a point that I meant to mention. One thing that we didn't do when we put up the votes was we at no point told anyone by what metrics they should be judging. So
yeah, that's a good point.
And I when I put those polls up, I did that very intentionally because ultimately, I know this is gonna upset some people.
Oh no, hot take incoming.
These ships aren't real and they don't exist. So
yeah,
it doesn't matter if one of them is better in a war situation, because that war has never happened. It's not real.
Yeah, like the Sovereign could kick every one of these ships' asses.
Oh yeah, up and down the fucking street. But
they're made up ships. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, we didn't give any justification. We never said, oh, which is the best looking, or which one do you like the lore of best. Mm-hmm. We just gave no qualification, so everyone was left to decide how they do it.
I think doing that also let us put in some fun ships as well, like the Antares type.
Yeah, because, if you're talking about, what's the best ship in canon, what's the most useful one, well, that one, transports fucking grain and is so basic that it can be automated.
Yep.
That's not going to go up against, the Defiant or whatever.
Backbone of the Federation, baby.
Yeah. Also, very importantly, we never said, oh, this is the Enterprise. No, it was Galaxy class. We were talking about the classes of ships, not the specific ship.
Yeah.
So we can, talk about it a bit. And our discussion of it is going to be, half real world, half in-universe stuff.
Oh, I'm going to bullshit my way through this. I promise if we ever do one of these again, I'll be more prepared. But it's been a few weeks of weirdness and then a Halo marathon. My brain is fried.
Oh, I get you. It's been... I'm just going to say it. 2020 has been a heck of a year.
Fucking, yep.
Anyway, let's get into the podcast.
Yes, let's.
So, the first ship we are going to be talking about is the USS Prometheus, or more specifically, the Prometheus class.
Urge to Kill Rising.
Which is mainly from the episode Message in a Bottle from Voyager. Although it did also appear in the fleet in Endgame in Voyager as well. You see it in the background.
Yes.
And you also see it in the episode Zati Prime in Enterprise, where you see it out the window of the Enterprise J.
Let's not.
But that's...
Please no.
But... yeah, that's in the 26th century, so either that ship was in use for much longer than the Miranda class.
That became the Miranda of the new fucking future.
Yeah. It's either that, or they just used whatever ship models they had to hand and hoped you wouldn't look too closely, because there's a Defiant out there too. But yeah, so the Prometheus class. Now, I'm going to hand this over to you for a moment, because I know you have some very... very strong opinions about the Prometheus class. Would you like to describe the ship?
It's a big fucking triangle with 4 nacelles on it that can split up into, 3 vessels?
Yes.
Now, I'm not a huge fan of the whole multi-vector assault mode in the first place, and this takes it to a level that's just silly, and also I have a thing against ships with more than 2 nacelles.
I mean, this one's got 5 because it has a little baby one.
So it does. It has that stupid little baby nacelle
that pops out the top of the saucer section, so that can maintain warp. And the worst part is there isn't even a door over it, so you can just see the hole.
Yep.
Where the nacelle is when it's like retracted. It's terrible.
But yeah, I have a thing against ships that have like more than 2 nacelles because I just think that it just looks odd. Like, remember the Galaxy X?
Yes.
Fuck that ship. Jesus, we put a 3rd nacelle on it. Fuck off.
I believe it was one of Gene Roddenberry's things that he did not. He always wanted all ships to have 2 nacelles. That was like the thing.
There's a. It gives a certain look to the ships from the front when you have the 2 nacelles. That I think is one of the key parts of, like, especially like Federation ship design. And this just doesn't fit with Federation stuff to me.
I get that.
I think it's the saucer section more than anything. It's like, it's too much. It's angled too much. It looks like a spearhead more than even the Nova class did.
Yeah, I mean, especially because it's supposed to be like an explicit warship, and like...
Yeah, the Defiant's an explicit warship as well, and it looks less dumb.
No, the Defiant is an escort.
No, it's fucking not. It was designed for fighting the Borg.
Officially on the books, it's an escort.
Yeah, officially in the books, the Federation can suck my dick. That's a warship.
Yeah, it is. It is 100%. But yeah, I think I can't remember who said it, but I think it might have been someone on Twitter who said that the Prometheus is like a toy. It's like a toy of a spaceship rather than like something that belongs in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I do kind of get where they're coming from. Plus, it has Andy Dick on board, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Because it's the Mark II of the emergency medical hologram is played by Andy Dick. And if kids, if you don't know who Andy Dick is...
He's a shitebag.
Be thankful. He was a quote-unquote comedian from like the early 2000s, I want to say. Yeah.
You know, the era when comedy was just being a dick to someone.
Yeah, and I mean, admittedly, because the episode that primarily features the Prometheus, it is largely Andy Dick and Robert Picardo talking to each other, and so it means it's a very heavy The Doctor episode,
which is normally fine,
and I'm okay with that because the Doctor is like the best character in Voyager.
The Doctor and Seven are the best characters.
Yes, by a country mile.
But, you know, just to get this out of the way, as I'm talking about it, I want to point out that the Prometheus beat in our poll. It beat the NX class Enterprise, the Prometheus, and the Centaur. The Centaur, fine, okay. I like the NX class. I'm sorry. I think it's a cool little design. It looks better when it gets a secondary hull on it.
Yeah, it beat the Nova class. You said it beat the Prometheus class.
Oh, sorry, Nova class.
It beat itself. Well, it split into 3 and beat itself. So.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah. NX, Nova, and I always get I don't know why. NX, Nova, and Centaur. It beat the fucking Nova. Really, it's the better version of that ship in terms of looks.
100%. The Nova is much better in terms of looks. I think people just... I think... because, I mean, I find the Prometheus kind of fun in a silly novelty way. Like, personally. I know a lot of people feel very strongly about it. It upset me that it beat the Nova, and to be honest, the Centaur, because I really like the Centaur's design, but...
The Centaur's a fun design of a certain era.
Yeah. But yeah, I know a lot of people do really like it.
And you're all terrible people.
A lot of people like it, and their opinions are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything more you want to say about the Prometheus before we move on?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't deserve last words.
The next ship So I mean, the Prometheus was technically the 8th ship, I guess, but these 4 before we get to the final 4 are just in whatever order because I couldn't be bothered to work out the maths of like
Fine.
Of like which one technically got more votes than the others. The next one is the Ambassador class. Now, I was shocked to find out there's not actually a huge amount of information about the Ambassador class knocking around.
Because it showed up for like what? It was a main thing in one episode when it was the Enterprise C.
Yeah, it was in the. I think it was a 2-parter yesterday's Enterprise, which it showed up there as a sort of intermediate step between the Excelsior and the Galaxy.
Yeah, and it certainly looks like that.
Because it was the Enterprise C, and we'd only seen it in like I think like some of the technical manual books had it in there.
And I think I might be wrong in this. I think in the Enterprise D's like what was it?
Yes,
the lounge room or the conference room. There's a bust of it.
Yes, there is, and it's like a very basic version of.
Super basic because I think those were made before they had all the designs nailed down.
Absolutely. It's actually an interesting thing because originally there's some concept art for the Ambassador that was a proper like midway between the Excelsior and the Galaxy. So it had like the ribbed neck of the Excelsior, and it had the more sort of flowing lines on the hull that the Galaxy had.
I don't know if I like that or not.
Look it up at some point. It's an interesting look, and they were originally going to go for that, but then they got told, by the way, you've got to get this ready in like a week, and they went, oh, we thought we had like a month. Shit, and then had to just rush through it, and so that's why the Ambassador is kind of basic. It looks a bit more like a kind of it looks way more Constitution. Looking. It's like a next gen era Constitution is probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I think that may be why I like it. It's got a very original series vibe to it.
But because it only really appeared in like I think it was used. The model was reused for an episode of something. And there's another episode in Next Gen where one's used as just like the ship that someone arrives on or something.
Yeah, nothing major.
But apart from that, it's really only in yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's a cool design, and they built a whole fucking model for it, and it's just, it's just kind of not really been used. Some interesting points about the actual model, an interesting point about the model itself. So the main time that we see it is in the yesterday's Enterprise story, where the Enterprise C gets sent forward in time, and it's at basically just before it would have been destroyed.
Yeah, fighting, was it Klingons?
Fighting Romulans.
Romulans, that sounds about right.
Was it? So it was like fighting Romulans, and it was in trying to save Klingons, and that's what started off.
Yeah,
like
got it.
The Khitomer Accords. It's been a while since I saw that episode.
Possibly.
Anyway, doesn't matter.
It has been a while.
Yeah, it's what started off the peace that they have in the Next Generation with the Klingon Empire. And so when it comes through, it's beat up to shit. Now, some of that battle damage was just painted on, but some of it, there's actually a photo you can find online of one of the crew holding a firework like next to it to like realistically burn it.
Nice.
Which I just thought was a fun little touch.
God, I love those model makers, those crazy little shits.
Oh yeah, I could I could literally, if we really went into the heavy detail about how individual ships were made, we could literally do a whole podcast about
or the size of the fucking models. Like some of the models of the Galaxy were, what was it? Is it 8 foot, 4 foot, something like
that? The full size Galaxy is like 9 foot, I think.
Oh, sorry, 9 foot. There you go.
I've got it. I have that note later on in my. I have it noted down later on. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But we could do like a whole podcast on like say the construction of the Galaxy class model, because there's so much, and because these things, by that point, people knew how much people love Star Trek. there's so much of this stuff that's been catalogued.
Yeah.
And they note it down, and people have gone through, and the crew have had interviews and stuff where they've gone into like the real minor little nuance of how these things were constructed and stuff.
To really highlight how important some of these models are to people, like how much people love these, there are fans out there that go hunting to try and find the originals. I'm pretty sure the Phase 2 one has been found. Excellent.
I didn't actually know they'd made a physical model of it.
I think they had, yeah.
Because I thought it only existed in concept art. I didn't actually know that. I'll have to go and have a look up about that. But yeah, the Ambassador didn't show up very much. It was in, as far as I'm aware, I think maybe 3 episodes in total.
Yeah. It might have been used in Backdrop in the Dominion War, but I also don't think I saw it, which I thought was weird.
As far as I'm aware, it's not. However, there is a canon book that does state that at least one of them was still in service during the Dominion War.
Which, okay. If the Miranda was in service during the Dominion War, surely the fucking ambassadors were.
I do feel like, because there's some ships that just stay around for fucking ages, and some get retired really quickly. I like to kind of, like, my head canon is that just some ships are very much like, if they're not broke, don't fix them. Like the basic frame for them just works, and so they just keep making them because they're simple to put together. And some of them are kind of really finicky, so they only build them when they need to. And I think some things like I think that my sort of like headcanon of it is that Mirandas and Excelsiors were just really solid designs that over time just got upgraded, and they were just still solid ships even like 100 years after they were originally built. You just stripped out the old components and replaced them with new ones.
Yeah.
I think that's how you're supposed to think about it. Because I mean, ultimately, like, if they're not falling apart, like, and they can keep up with other things, like, as long as they're not doing the jobs that the Enterprise is doing, then there's no real downside of using like a Miranda.
The Miranda trying to do the jobs the Enterprise did. Fucking Christ.
I mean, that's part of what the Lower Decks is about. Is like, what's the ships that arrive after the Enterprise. The shit-ass little ones that do the little jobs that aren't done by the big flagships.
Yeah.
But because of that lack of thing, like, you look through like the information on the Ambassador, there's nowhere near as much information about it as there is about like other Enterprises. Basically, like, we've not seen that much of the inside of it. We don't know specific stats about a lot of it. So it's just a kind of cool looking ship that we don't know a huge amount about. But hey, people liked it enough to get it through the first round. So
yeah, I'm happy it did.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Defiant class.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the Defiant class?
I love the Defiant. I shouldn't, because it's so against, like, a lot of the design philosophies, but it's so fucking cool.
Well, it's just it's a fist in starship form, basically.
Yeah, it's this just completely compressed little ship that was originally shaking itself apart because it was too fucking good, like, overpowered.
Yeah, I think Cisco like describes it as it's overpowered, overgunned, and it nearly shook itself to pieces during its like first run.
Yeah, it's great. It's such a neat, tidy little design. There's nothing too over the top about anything. Everything's kind of just fits. There's no huge cannons hanging off of it or anything.
Yeah, I've always really liked it. It's just a cool little design, and it's like, it fits into that category where you look at it and you can tell it's a Federation ship, despite it not looking anything like any other Federation ship.
Yeah,
it's just like the little touches, like that it's, it's got like you can clearly see the bridge where that exists on the ship, which carries across from like the saucer sections of other ships.
Yep.
And apparently it was
the front deflector dish and stuff on it.
It was apparently confirmed in an interview once that no, it doesn't have source of separation. Which is like, I mean, to be fair,
what fucking walloper asked that question?
To be fair, that's also technically not true, but I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
One thing I like about the Defiant class is that it was designed specifically and 100% to kill Borg.
Yep.
The one time it has to do that, it gets its shit wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
Which is in the Battle of Sector 1, is I think the canonical name for it. The battle from the start of First Contact.
Yes.
Where the Millennium Falcon shows up in the background.
Yeah. Fucking forgot about that, yeah. Yeah. It was designed to... Or it was one of the concepts... I always took it as one of the concepts of, like, how could we make an anti-Borg ship? Not necessarily that it would be a good anti-Borg ship, but... it's rad as hell.
Yeah.
God
it's
damn
just
it.
this... It does have the problem of that as a ship, it is its real size and power of whatever it needs to be for the episode.
Yeah.
So it does mean
fucking little killer, or it should be anyway. Because like, what is it? Fucking quad phase cannons plus quantum torpedo launchers.
Yeah. But it's also like. Also, it's like done badly. You know, we've seen a Defiant class do badly in a fight against an Excelsior class, which feels very wrong.
Yes. But yeah, that's why we said these are made up spaceships from made up wars and made up battles, because the writers can change things on a whim to suit the episode.
Yeah. The one that we mostly see is, of course, the USS Defiant.
Yes.
Which is obviously where the class gets its name from. If I remember rightly, I think that it was originally going to be called, the Valiant, but it was decided not in the end because Voyager was in production, and they didn't want to have a hero ship that also began with a V.
Right,
which makes sense, and I do really like the name Defiant. I think that that's a really good name for that ship as well. So.
Very much so. It totally does give it that kind of tenacious little fucking underdog vibe.
I mean, originally it was also intended to just be a beefy version of a runabout. Like that was
I can totally see that.
That was the bracket it was going to fit in. And you see some of the really early concepts, you can see that was what they were going for.
I do need to double check the other names, but you know... Oh, God. Okay, here we go. You know Star Trek Online?
Yes.
How if you took an escort class ship, or any ship, you got like variants of classes, so you could mix and match bits?
Yeah.
One of the variants of the Defiant was the Valiant.
That makes sense. And
I think the other one was the Gallant, but I'm not sure.
Maybe. It's been a while since I played it.
We do just trip balls first into that game sometimes.
So, okay, it's a game I will just occasionally play non-stop for a week and then forget exists for a year.
Yep.
Anyway, the Defiant itself originally came with it didn't originally come with, it was fitted with a Romulan cloaking device that was like an exception to the treaty they have with the Romulans that the Federation won't make a cloaking device.
Yeah.
However, the script writers quite quickly realised that having a Romulan on board who was constantly telling them not to use it was really fucking tedious. And there's like one episode that I remember really distinctly, the scene where they're like, "Okay, we're going to go use the cloaking device," and it's like, "There's no Romulan here to operate it," and Sisko's like, "Well, I won't tell them if you don't." And then from then on, they just use the cloaking device whenever they fucking want to.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? Because it was one of those things that's an interesting thing from like the star politics thing, but it really got in the way of storytelling.
Oh, for sure.
Especially when they got warlike with the Romulans throughout the series. So.
Yeah. And then the Romulans helped them in the Dominion War eventually, and oh god, it's a mess.
God, DS9's great.
Yeah, seriously, DS9 I think is still the best series.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine is my favourite Star Trek series by quite a big margin.
Which is really funny because everyone fucking hated it at the time.
I didn't like, when I first watched it as a kid, I didn't like the early seasons very much, but like when I came back and watched them recently,
they're kind of rough, but they get there.
I think like they have some like it doesn't have the big story arc stuff, but it does have some really nice character stuff that I really appreciated. It really sets up the series. It's like I find it really like DS9. I think is kind of a hard sell to people because it's like it's the best Star Trek, but I really do feel you kind of have had to have seen a lot of Next Gen to have the context of why DS9's so good.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you need to have seen the best of both worlds to, give the first episode the proper context.
Yeah.
But to be fair, you should just watch Best of Both Worlds anyway because it's good.
It's some of the best episodes of TV, just generally.
It's just fucking great. I think that came out in 1990, so it's like fucking 30 years old.
Christ.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, DS9's great. Go watch it.
Yeah, go fucking watch it, please. Watch it. Don't make me shout at you. I will.
Other things to say is that so there's supposed to be a door at the front of the Defiant where it docks with DS9. There is no door there. You can look at the Master System display. There is no door.
Don't think about it.
Also, that entire front pod, that is supposed to be able to be fired off as a last-ditch super torpedo. Apparently. I don't know where this information comes from, but I have heard it.
That's some anime shit, I'm just saying.
It's like the escape pod from the Solo version of the Millennium Falcon. That movie that is better than you are probably expecting it to be, but also I'm not going to tell anyone to go and watch it if they haven't.
Fair.
And so it does technically have source of separation if you want to get really
want to stretch that fucking definition.
Yeah. So would you like to know one additional piece about the Defiant that I remembered whilst reading the Memory Alpha page about? And no. Oh, you don't? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead,
Which is I read the William Shatner novel, which I believe is called The Return.
Fuck.
Which is part of a trilogy of Star Trek books that he wrote, in which Kirk comes back and is super athletic and everyone loves, and it's the most fan fiction Star Trek.
Yes. Oh, fuck. You've made me ill just bringing it up. Jesus Christ. Those novels are, yes, fan fiction, and you saying William Shatner's novels is very kind, because if I was the ghostwriter of those novels, I'd want to blame it on Shatner too.
Yeah.
However, fuck that guy.
However, William Shatner's a massive twat. It legit actually affects my enjoyment of the Kirk character by how much of a twat William Shatner is.
Yeah. We have Chris Pine, it's okay, I hope.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's certainly one of the better end of Chris's. He's no fucking... What's his name?
Oh, the other one. Yeah, don't worry about
it. The one who plays Star-Lord, who is a knobhead.
Yep.
Anyway, but in those books, there is a Defiant class called the USS Monitor.
Okay, not a bad name.
And I want to tell you 3 facts about it that will make you hate it. One, because it is a super, super secret special one. It's black.
Okay, wait a minute. I just want the listeners to get the full effect of this, or just to really visualize this. I am sitting here in my chair. I have relaxed all my muscles and I have closed my eyes in preparation for this.
So it's entirely black.
Okay.
It doesn't have like the regular running lights and stuff on it. It's like emissions are set so they don't come out of like the normal visible spectrum, so it's like super stealthy.
Basic bitch stealth stuff. Yep, got it.
Yeah. 2, it's so stealthy it doesn't even have its registry number or name on it. And
that
3
kind of goes with the territory, fine.
And 3, they decided that it should be named the Enterprise briefly because it happened to have Kirk on board.
Oh, fuck. Right off with that.
It is the most teenager making their own spaceship.
Oh my god, that is some, like, I have self-insert a spaceship and it's gonna become the next Enterprise. No, it's fucking not, Shatner, you absolute hack fuck.
Yeah, I seem to remember I did have, when I used to play Star Trek Armada a lot, I did like download a mod that someone had made the USS Monitor in that.
Yeah, of course.
I remember using it at one point.
Oh my god, doing, like... Okay, Kirk is an important and heroic character and, like, a remembered character in canon. But he's not the only captain of the Enterprise. That's some horse shit.
Yeah. I think Picard might have been on board it as well, so I think that's the thing.
I don't care. I think Picard would go, this isn't the Enterprise, though. What are you talking about? Yep. Oh my god, that's painful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wib. You've actually made me cross.
It's terrible. You see, this is why. If you found Longfang being mildly irritated there, then you should tell him that as I mentioned on Twitter the other day, we should totally do an episode on Ready Player One.
No, we shouldn't. I can't deal with that.
I want to hear. I want to hear how your soul is rendered
I
apart
don't
by
want to
watching
watch
that movie.
weaponized nostalgia. I don't want to watch the "Hey, remember this thing" movie that's also written by a fucking arsepiece.
But it's got Mechagodzilla in it that they.
It's not even a good Mechagodzilla design. It looks like a fucking Transformer.
It looks like, yeah, it does look more like a Zoid than Mechagodzilla. It's really
correct,
weird.
And it looks like a shit Zoid at that.
The weird part is they got like the rights to have the Godzilla theme and everything, but they did, and it's explicitly stated in the book to be Kiryu, the version from like Tokyo SOS and
my god, that fucking writer can go and take a flying fuck to himself.
Yeah, we'll move on from that. We'll move on.
Please do.
But yeah, anything you want to say more about the Defiant before we move on?
Defiant's great, love it.
Okay, cool. Well,
now I need to like fucking blow off steam. Give me something else to scream at.
Okay, no, this is just a cool one. Next up, and the final in the runners-up, I guess, is the Borg Cube.
Yes.
Which I was really surprised how well that got voted for.
We had a conversation about that at the time. We were both surprised, but, you know, when you think about it, it's fucking iconic.
Yeah, it's iconic, it's cool. I think it's just because it's like, though, and this is not to diminish the incredibly fucking amazing work that was put forth by the model makers, but it's sort of like intentionally the absence of design.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was made out of fucking plastic sprues.
The original one was made, 'cause it was a 3-foot cube.
Yeah.
One side was missing, but the other 5 sides were detailed.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So one side so you could access all the electronics and have a mounting bracket, because of course it's a fucking cube. You didn't have to be able to see it from every side, because you can just pretend the side is another side because it's a cube.
Genius.
But it was made from like just custom shapes, and then with a layer of etched brass over the top of it.
Right.
That's how they got the.
What I'm maybe thinking of is like if they built a conceptual model. I'd remember reading somewhere that it was made out of like just off-cut plastic spruce.
The concept model was literally a cardboard cube.
Okay.
What you're thinking
I'm talking
of?
out my arse then. That's fine.
What you're thinking of is the I think the breakaway models they're called, which is the one they exploded at the end of Best of Both Worlds.
Yep. I apologise for my bad information, everyone.
That one is a big black box with a shitload of sprues glued to them. If you happen to be listening to this and you're not one of the people that knows us from Warhammer content, sprues are the things that model kits come on, the pieces of plastic frames that you snip out. Yeah, that you snip out the things from. Basically, they're leftovers from when these things are formed, and they keep all the parts together. But yeah. Speaking as a model maker, then those things are phenomenally useful for making custom things.
Yes, when
you need to.
You are a crazy person with those things, and it's always fun to see what you come up with.
Thank you.
When it comes to the cube, when we talked about it and we realised, no, it is legit iconic. I'm thinking about when we first see it, first deal with it, and then Wolf 359 happens, and you realise, oh, these things are bad news.
They are fucking dangerous. They are. They're this I think it's the thing because they fit into that kind of eldritch horror kind of thing.
They do, yeah, because they are just a fucking shape.
It's why I think, like...
There's no, like... especially, actually, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, like, the nacelles and design language. There is no visible design language on that's Star Trek. It's a fucking box.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's great. It's it's a 3 kilometer cube, which does mean that the internal volume of it is 28 cubic kilometers.
Good.
So that's fucking great.
That's a lot of drones.
Yeah, that is. I think it's got like over 100,000 in each
More
cube.
than likely.
There's a lot of
beehive.
There was a lot of plans over the years to have like cubes that were made of other cubes. So like cubes themselves are made out of smaller cubes, sort of thing.
Yeah, there was also a ship in, oh god, I barely remember the episode. I can't even remember who was in charge of the Enterprise at the time. It was a Borg vessel that looked completely different. It didn't have the same impact as a full-on cube.
Yeah, because I mean, they had the sphere that you see in First Contact and later appears in Voyager. There is a small scout one that you see in Voyager.
Shaped like an engram from Destiny. Isn't it? Little hexagonal sort of prism thing.
There is a Borg diamond, but I can't remember if that ever appears in canon or if I just remember it from Star Trek Armada.
Or online. This is the other problem.
Yeah, but no, there is a long, sort of the scout ones are sort of long, but they've got like thick bit at either end. They're kind of like a dumbbell, but like an extra thick dumbbell. It's a dumbbell that's been stung by a bee. That's what it looks like.
Yep.
But made out of Borg stuff. And that's like a little scout ship.
There's also cubes with armor plates on them, isn't there?
Yes, which I think is called a tactical cube officially.
It's not as cool.
No, it's not.
It makes sense, but it doesn't have the same impact because then it's like, oh no, that's armor plates, and then it normalizes it somehow.
Yeah, but yeah, there's not actually much to say about them because they are just kind of cool. Like,
yeah, no, I think that's the cool thing. The great thing about them is they gave a huge impact because they weren't like any other ship in the series. Yeah, and I think that really it comes across because when they came to make a new model for First Contact, because basically the one they'd made for Next Gen wasn't quite up to the standards of like being shot for a movie. Yeah,
so they made
stuff like that.
So they made a new one, and the version they made for First Contact is fucking gorgeous. A lot of apparently because they're nice and thin and are good for use of like piping at that scale. Mm-hmm. A shitload of paper clips went into making that version.
Good.
Which, as a model maker, I can attest to paper clips being one of the most useful bits of model making stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just fantastic, yeah. Just a fantastic thing, and that's what there's a lot. That again had the kind of etched brass thing, but it was basically just an improved version.
Mm-hmm. Even like the model we're looking at here, that's a TV version. I'm going to say. I'm guessing off the top of my head anyway. The fact you can see through it in some areas is also a really nice touch.
Yeah, it
adds to the like, okay, what the fuck is inside this thing? Sort of feeling to it because it's like, is there atmosphere in it? What's going on? How's there? It's so mysterious without anything necessarily odd or like having spinny, flashy lights or anything.
Yeah, no, it's one of the like. It's one of the reasons why I find like Voyager kind of a frustrating series.
Yes.
Like, as a whole, like, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of nostalgia for Voyager. I do like watching episodes of Voyager, but it did kind of. It made the Borg into just another bad guy.
Yeah, it kind of blunted their teeth a little bit.
Like, I kind of wish they...
Because even First Contact was still like, oh no, the Borg are a fucking threat.
Yeah, I feel like, even though I do want to, like... The problem with the Borg is that, like... So, the Q-Who is the first episode they appear in. And I think that, and Best of Both Worlds... And I can never remember what it's called, but the one with Hugh.
Oh, yeah, I know the one you mean. I can't remember the name of it right now.
The captured Borg called Hugh. I think those three from Next Generation are fucking great. When Hugh comes back in Next Gen, and there's the whole lore thing,
Yeah, that's not a great one.
Yeah, I think that's like the start of the Borg kind of not being super great. Then First Contact happens, and like there are things about First Contact, like the introduction of a queen and stuff that like
Now,
I understand why narratively
they
did
that
it.
talk because it's clearly like, oh no, we need an actual focal point baddie. Okay, fine.
Yeah, like from a narrative perspective, I understand why, and you can go, oh, it's just sometimes they. I think it is sort of how they portray it, of that sometimes they just manifest.
It's a singular like node, basically. Yeah.
Which they don't always need, but they build them when they need them, sort of thing. Yeah. Okay, fine. But I do feel that sort of like it's funny. First Contact is the peak and the beginning of the rot setting in for the Borg. I feel.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that were introduced,
the scenes with the Borg, and them very like. Oh no, they've adapted to the phaser rifles we're using already. Shit. Hit them with the rifles. Oh fuck, that's not working. I just saw someone get assimilated in front of me. The only thing I can do is shoot him. It's amazing.
I think it's because First Contact made the Borg scary again. So.
Yeah.
And then Voyager kind of spent its entire time sort of making them just another enemy, and I think it's a shame. It's a shame.
It's watch First Contact. Just as a movie, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I've often said, because my most contentious Star Trek opinion has always been that I think that Generations is a better movie than First Contact.
I would say the other way around. I think Generations is, well, okay. Generations, that's a movie. First Contact, I'd still say is a movie, and then Insurrection is a feature-length episode.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I say that, like, all I mean is that Generations feels a lot more like a movie, whereas a lot of the time First Contact basically it barrels into the conceit of it in like 5 minutes, because they're like, they're creating a temporal vortex, time travel. Okay, time travel's in this movie now, and then that's just it, and it just happens out of nowhere. Little things like that.
We still get that scene of the Enterprise swooping in to help out with the Borg cube.
Yeah.
And it's the best. Shut up.
And I will say that even though I think Generations is much better as a movie, First Contact is more fun and better to watch.
Yeah.
And I would watch First Contact 12 times in a row before I wanted to watch Generations again.
I might watch First Contact after we're done today.
Yeah. And that's my opinion that I sometimes say to people, and I watch them get very annoyed with me very quickly because they disagree with me, but they also realise I kind of have a little bit of a point.
Oh, you totally have a point.
And they hate it, and it's why it's my favourite contentious opinion, because also it's completely not important.
Yeah, it's the same. Like, I am of the kind of shitty opinion that Insurrection is actually not a bad episode.
Insurrection's a perfectly fine episode of Next Generation, but with a different ship.
Yeah, and it totally deals with the fact that the Federation are a bunch of pricks sometimes.
Yeah, because like some people got really mad about, especially like the inclusion of stuff in, I think mostly season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, because they were like, oh, it shows like and Picard as well. Like, yeah, showing Picard's the main one actually.
Synthetic workforce thing.
Yeah, showing the Federation being shitty, and it's like, yeah, they've always done that. They've always shown that the Federation is like a noble ideal, but like is occasionally shitty, and part of the story has been the good people in the Federation maintaining its high ideals. That's like Picard's entire shtick.
Yeah. Hey guys, if you want to hear more about how the Federation are dicks and there's a huge grey area and the way that non-Federation races look at how this goes on, watch Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
There's an entire conversation between Quark and Odo about root beer.
I think it's about this. I think it's Quark and Garak.
Oh shit, it is Garak, because Odo can't drink fluid at the time.
Like how the Federation is bright and bubbly like root beer, and you hate it, but if you keep drinking it, you end up liking it.
Yeah.
Which I can attest to. I've started drinking root beer recently, and I fucking love it now.
Oh, no.
And I wasn't sure at first, so yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah,
I'll
the grey areas. Yeah, I also have Iron Brew in the fridge as well. So
good man.
But we should move on because we're just talking about. We've been tangenting here. We've got.
Yes, I'm sorry, everyone. On this episode where we talk about fucking starships, we're tangenting. God forbid.
But we're unless you've got anything more to say about the Borg cube.
No, honestly, I think when we saw how the voting was going, it really made me think about it more, and hence the opinion I've kind of come to espouse on this episode. It's good. I really like it, and this poll got me to think about it more, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. And so now we're going to go into the ones where we're actually going to talk a bit more in depth about them.
Shit.
Be fucking warned, I guess. So when we got through to the final four, you know, there were some things I wouldn't have expected to be there, but you know what? There's some that you were very expected to be there, but the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that came in at number 4 in that final bracket, which was the Intrepid class, which got 16.9% of the vote.
I'm just glad it didn't win.
So the Intrepid class is the class that Voyager is. It's supposed to be a long-range explorer vessel, and it is 244 meters long.
Oh, you went really in depth. Okay, I'm going to enjoy this shit.
It's not that bad, don't worry. I mean, for the most part. Maybe. Okay. So yeah, it's supposed to be an explorer. I think there's only 2 we see in canon, which is Voyager and the Bellerophon in an episode of DS9.
Yes, I forgot about that name. It's such a good name.
Yes, every time I hear about it, I look at what Bellerophon means and I go, "That's cool," and then I instantly forget about it.
I was going to say I've forgotten what it means.
One of the interesting things about the Intrepid class is that it has a special computer. It has bio-neural gel packs,
yes,
which it's basically organic parts of its computer system.
Yeah, actually, I'll give it that. I kind of like the idea of biological computer systems.
It's a really cool idea that Voyager completely whiffs doing anything interesting with because it's Voyager.
They did get a cold once.
Yes. Wasn't it cheese made the... Like a bad
it was
cheese
Neelix trying to make cheese. Oh fucking Christ!
And he made the ship sick or something.
Okay, I'm just going to say fuck Voyager.
There are like a handful of Voyager episodes I genuinely love.
Neelix deserved better writing because he has some episodes when you're like, holy shit, and then other episodes where you're like, please fuck off this ship.
I don't hate Neelix as much as some people do, but like,
no, I don't either.
He has a couple of really good episodes, and what there is when I think to Voyager, as much as I was ragging earlier about Voyager ruining the Borg, I did really enjoy Scorpion, where Species 8472 are introduced.
Oh yeah,
and I really enjoy the 2-parter where the Hirogen take over the ship and turn it into a World War II simulation.
Okay, yeah, you know what, fair.
I genuinely really like that.
Yeah, that was a really well done episode, actually.
Yeah. And there are really good episodes of Voyager. I don't want to insinuate that. And
also, Hirogen dressed up as Nazis was hilarious.
Yeah. And basically, any episode that features the Doctor heavily is generally pretty good.
Yeah.
And as it goes on, any episode that features Seven of Nine a lot is generally good. Except for that one episode where
not the Chakotay stuff, please. Not the holodeck one, please.
There's an episode which sort of says, hey, sometimes women be lying about sexual assault.
Oh, fuck.
Like, it doesn't directly say that, but it uses the like screen language of that to do about her getting a nanoprobes taken away. And it's
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that episode really. I was like, I don't know if you intended to do that, but I wish you hadn't.
I don't think they intended to do that. I think they were looking for an interesting thing to do with, like, you know how Seven's brain is half Borg bullshit, and you know, you can fuck around with her brain so it remembers things that don't happen or did happen, and it just looks bad.
Yeah,
if they did that to Data, it'd be different.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't do that in Next Generation because anytime they needed to sexually assault someone, they did it to Troy.
Oh.
Usually like mentally, like through some psychic power or something.
It happens in Nemesis.
It happens way too many fucking times. Seriously, it's really like I didn't realize how often it happened until recently. I was like, oh shit! It's something like 4 times it happens across the run, and it's like that's a bit much.
Never forget that Nemesis 1 happened, and 2, we got robbed at some point of having a young Tom Hardy play young Picard in a TV show.
True.
I wish that had happened because he looked the fucking part when he was bald.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, he did an absolutely fantastic fucking job.
With a shit script.
Nemesis is not fantastic, but Tom Hardy is one of the things that shine out about that movie that is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
As is the big ship that I think we both forgot about putting it in the list. The Scimitar.
It's cool.
It's cool. We probably should have put that in the list, but I forgot about it.
I mean, I can talk about it quickly. It being a weird Romulan ship that might have something to do with the Romulans experimenting with Borg tech.
Yeah, that's been like a thing that occurs frequently. Like they keep touching upon that in various canon and non-canon things.
Yep,
it's interesting. But we should probably be talking about the Intrepid class rather than going off on rants about Nemesis or Voyager.
It's almost like I'll do anything to avoid talking about Voyager.
Interesting things about the Intrepid class is its nacelles move as well, which I think is stated to be... I think it's related to the whole thing that happened in Next Generation, where they're like, oh, in certain areas of space, subspace gets torn up. And I think that's the reason for the nacelles moving. It's something like that. The Sovereign class was originally... They had the idea of doing that to that as well, but they thought it would look a bit too much like Voyager, and they didn't
thank God they didn't do it.
Yeah, they didn't want to have the two ships be too similar.
Leave it for Voyager.
And that was a good choice, because we won't be talking about it in this episode because it didn't get any further than the original run, but the Sovereign class is fucking gorgeous, and that is a lovely looking ship.
You bastards.
And I'm glad they didn't make it have weird spin, movie things.
Moving wings, basically.
Yeah. I will say, actually, I am glad that the Constitution didn't get any further, because then we'd have to talk about at least 5 different types of ship, because the Constitution has been refitted and reimagined so many times.
Yeah, I kind of wish that we got a TNG refit of it, I'm just saying.
That would have been cool. I mean, we kind of did in the Ambassador, I suppose, but...
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
One that's as far away from Kirk as possible, apparently, because that motherfucker's stink doesn't leave the captain's chair.
Yeah. Voyager and Intrepid class in general also had feet. It has little feet that come out.
It has landing gear, I forgot.
Yeah, so it can land. It's sort of like they say it in it that it's not a good thing. They shouldn't do it very often because it's dangerous.
But it happens in an episode. Oh, God,
it happens in... Yeah, it happens in quite a few episodes. Now, there was actually
Seska. Fuck!
There was a physical versions of those feet made that would attach to the big studio model of it.
Oh, nice.
But they only used it once because it didn't look very good, and every other time it was just done with CGI.
Fair.
It was in the episode The 37s that it was shown. Just out of interest.
Right, when they found Amelia Earhart, right, yeah.
Star Trek is a very serious sci-fi.
Fuck off, Voyager.
Technically, it also has a captain's yacht. It is canonically called the Aero Shuttle,
which is a terrible name.
Yeah, if we first kind of saw one of those actually used in Insurrection, from the bottom of the Sovereign class's saucer section, a little ship called Captain's Yacht pops out. It's sort of like a big runabout.
Honestly, they call it the Captain's Yacht, and that's really douchey. I personally see it more as like a ambassadorial kind of transport type deal.
Yeah. I think I kind of assume Captain's Yacht is a bit of a nickname for it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It's fucking better than Aero Shuttle. Fuck off.
Yeah, they tried to. Now that if you look on the bottom of Voyager's saucer, you can see
the outline of it.
And in the system display, you see at the back. I don't think it's in the original season or 2, but they do change those things over time throughout as seasons go on, and they make them more accurate. Like the Defiant's original one is made from a pre-production version, so it's completely wrong. But you actually see it is in there, and they just never use it and never mention it in the entire series. Mm-hmm. But it is there. It does have a little shuttle, and I guess they don't need to because they do have
use it at all.
It's used in, like, I think a novel at one point. I think that's it.
I could swear I saw it in an episode, but it might be
Never
that I've seen
used.
like a CG model of it.
There has been
never did.
There has been an official CG model made.
Oh, maybe
yes.
what I was thinking of.
But it was never used in the series. Which is funny, considering that one of Voyager's defining traits is saying that they have no shuttles and that they're on limited resources, but blowing up a shuttle every other episode.
Yep.
They go through something silly, like that's an exaggeration. I think they go through like 18 shuttles and 2 Delta Flyers throughout the season or something like that, or the full run of the show. And considering that building a shuttle's like not insignificant task, it's weird.
It's almost like the writers didn't quite keep consistency very well on that show for some reason. Perhaps because of some producers that were bell-ends. Anyway.
Would you like to know some fun facts about the model of the Intrepid class?
Sure.
Because Voyager aside, I do actually like the actual ship. I think it's a fun-looking ship. And the physical model is a very impressive thing that was built.
I just want to say, I think Voyager can have the same issue I have with the Prometheus in that I'm not a fan of the saucer shape. I get it. It's the least egregious version. But I don't know, Starship design in the Voyager era got a little bit weird with that.
I understand that. I
think it's because it ends so bluntly. It's not like even a full kind of saucer shape. It just kind of like divots in quickly as it gets to the secondary hull.
Yeah, I get that. I think that's one of the things that it took them a little bit of iterations of doing. I mean, that's one of the big things that changed on the Sovereign class. On every appearance, they slowly smoothed out. Because once they removed the necks from Federation ships and just made them have a solid, go from the saucer straight to the secondary hull.
Actually, give me 1 minute. I'm just going to get in my chair correctly and say this. Hey, you know how people complain that Star Trek ship design's crap because of the saucer section and hull, strut? Fuck off, it's a made-up ship.
Yeah, it's not real. It's fine.
Sorry, just had to get that out because I love the Connie and people are like, yeah, but it's got that really thin. I don't care.
Yeah,
I do not care. If you kill people's creativity by saying that wouldn't work in your made-up sci-fi setting, we're all going to end up with Borg cubes and nothing else.
Yeah, you'd end up with this very kind of utilitarian design of ships, and that can be fun. Some things have that, but yeah,
I can now attest Halo has that, and it suits the aesthetic of that thing fine.
Yeah, it's it's sometimes I really like Star Trek ship design because it is uniquely Star Trek ship design.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of the things that some of the new shows like Discovery and Picard, I think, have had problems trying to latch into what makes Star Trek ship design.
Yeah. Also, budget's been a problem, I think, for them as well.
Yeah, so they haven't been able to have as many ships as they want.
Or at least maybe they copy-paste the same ship a whole lot in a certain scene.
Yeah, that's really weird in Picard.
Yeah.
Discovery doesn't really have that problem, actually, because when they have a fleet of ships, they do just have a shitload of ships that are different designs. Like the first fight in the Battle of the Binary Stars that's in the opening episodes of Discovery, there's 10 different designs of ships in there.
Hey, listeners, notice how we're still not talking about the Intrepid?
Jesus Christ. We can't keep... Okay. The physical model of the USS Voyager was built in 1994, and it was 61 inches long.
Okay.
Throughout the series, they used both a physical and a CGI model. I think this is the first show where they were using CGI right from the start.
Okay.
Because the intro scene, the opening of the show,
it does have a good opening.
That has both some scenes of the physical model, some scenes of the CGI model. It's most apparent in the final shot where it curves around and zooms off into the distance because the CGI technology was kind of primitive and it literally didn't render a couple of the panels on the underside of it. Yeah. So you can see some blank, dark panels on the bottom of the ship.
Fine.
You'll never notice it unless someone points it out to you.
Yeah.
But those are supposed to be textured and they're just not. But there's some... I think, by the time they got to the end, mostly because there's a work of a guy called... I'll probably pronounce his name wrong, but Robert Bonchune.
Okay.
who painstakingly improved the quality of the digital model over time, making it match the physical model as close as he could, like right down to... So on the deflector dish, the actual thing behind the panel, there's like a solid piece of resin with like a single light source behind it.
Okay.
On the physical model, and so that means that it spreads light in a very particular way. On the original CGI model, that was like... It was just flat lighting.
That absolute legend.
And he went in and basically recreated things like that. And made it so that it would have the quirks of the physical model.
That show did not deserve such a hero.
Yeah, there's some really nice high-res renders that were made relatively recently of the original Voyager model, and it is fucking gorgeous. Like,
awesome.
A lot of work was done on that, and it does mean that there are times when it's actually kind of difficult to tell if it's the CGI or physical model you're looking at. But would you like to know the really easy way to tell which one it is?
Oh, God. Okay.
If you look on the back, under the shuttle bay, there is a row of windows. On the physical model, those lights are never lit. There's no lights in them because there was no room for them to fit the electronics in there. Yeah. But on the CGI model, those windows are lit.
Mm.
Also, some of the rooms have... like the windows do have like little recessed parts and have photographs of the actual physical sets in them to make the windows look a little bit more realistic.
That's adorable.
Which is just fucking great. If I remember rightly, the Sovereign class model takes that to an extreme, and that actually has some very tiny rooms, like with little furniture in some of the bigger windows.
I get the impression that they just had a lot of fun making the Sovereign.
The Sovereign was the last proper model.
That's true, yeah.
Because
which is depressing.
It's the last one on screen, and it's used in First Contact, and it's not used in Insurrection. That's a CGI one by then.
Yeah.
So the Sovereign in First Contact is the last hurrah of Star Trek models being used.
That's kind of tragic, isn't it?
And it's upsetting because the Sovereign is such a gorgeous model.
Yeah.
Like, aside from my love of the design, but just from someone who, like, makes and paints and builds models, that thing is a fucking work of art, like, in and of itself. So why I was really pleased in The Mandalorian, I think it's all the shots in space of the Razor Crest are a physical model.
Good. I honestly... Part of me really wishes Star Trek just... for the sake of tradition, stuck to using models, because there's something about the model work that ages way better than CG.
Yeah, like, I think, like, the CG got quite good over time.
CG's going to hit a point where it'll be the same. It'll look fine, like, ageless sort of style.
I'll tell you this for nothing. The effects work in First Contact, I think, is vastly more visually appealing than any of the space effects work in any of the modern Star Trek shows, because they're very heavy on the lens flare-y, like J.J. Abrams style,
which they stopped fucking doing in later Star Trek movies.
Well, they stopped doing that in Star Trek Beyond because Star Trek Beyond is the movie that series doesn't deserve, because Star Trek Beyond is great.
Yeah.
God damn it. Yeah.
We almost got a new design of that Enterprise as well. God damn it.
Okay, I've just got one last thing to say about the Intrepid, and then we can move on and stop getting derailed.
Say your piece.
Say my piece, which is that the model of the Voyager was bought for $132,000, including all the fees and stuff, and it currently resides with a collector who lives in Leicester, which is like an hour away from me. So,
Web. Road trip.
I don't think they are on public display.
I don't give a fuck.
Is this how we're going to publicly announce our intention to burgle someone's house?
Oh no! I want to see this dude's collection.
Oh, we do. Oh, so we just a standard B&E, just breaking and entering.
Yeah. Okay. We just do some lock picking work. We get in, we have a look around, take some photos for our respective podcasts, and then put them out there on a platform that isn't connected to us, so no one realizes.
It's like urban exploring, but an even bigger crime. But
probably less dangerous than urban exploding, though. I'm not going to fall through a fucking floor.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Now, overall, I do like the Intrepid class. I think it's a fun thing. I think one of my biggest upsets with Voyager was that we didn't get to see that ship fall apart and get rebuilt throughout the season. Throughout the run of the show, because
you're a huge fan of the Year of Hell storyline.
Yeah.
And you wanted that the whole time.
Yeah, like, obviously it doesn't have to be as grim as that because Year of Hell's fucking grim. But I think it would have been good if Voyager, and it's, I think it would have been a thing where if the stories wouldn't even have to really reflect it too much, but just if it kept the nicks and scratches and damage that it had. And you can periodically repair it, but maybe have some things where, like, there's a huge panel on the side that where a whole chunk got blown out and they weren't able to replicate it, so there's, like, an off-colour panel. And, like, it just had bits like that, and, like, on the inside it was a bit more hodgepodge. Like, it doesn't have to be outrageous. They do still have replicators. It did remain
too clean. Even just some scorch marks. Just give us some scorch marks.
Just it was far too clean the whole time, and I think that even without changing anything of the story itself, it would improve Voyager as a series about like 5% just with that purely aesthetic change. And I understand why, because changing the physical model would be a nightmare all the time, and then matching the CGI models, because CGI was still... It wasn't like it is today, where any fucker who's got the time and talent can, like, fucking build a ship, can figure out a ship and alter it pretty quickly. Like, it was still a bit of a nightmare to get these things, like, in there and re-rendered.
When did you say that the model was built? The physical one?
Well, the original, the physical model was built in 1994, so...
Okay, that's 94. Think about the fucking operating systems these computers would be running at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, shall we move on to the next ship?
Please.
Okay, and this one we might not get distracted about the whole time. So, this is one that I was really surprised that got so high, but I do understand it, which is, at number 3, there was the Romulan Warbird, with 18.6% of the vote. More specifically, it is the Dederadex class.
Yes. Good job. I always forget that, and then when someone says, I go, yeah, the Dederadex. Yep, okay, yep, never get it. This thing's fucking rad.
It's a very cool ship. It's really big as well.
It's bigger than the Galaxy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It was originally designed to be 1,353 meters long, but in later technical manuals was stated to be 1,041.65 meters long.
Okay.
It gets hyper specific.
Of course it does. Did any of your digging mention a garden?
What?
So, when I was young, I had the Star Trek Fact Files, which was a subscription magazine thing.
Oh, one of those things, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, see the interior section of the Dederadex, specifically where you see that orange glowy bit?
Yeah.
Directly below that, I'm pretty sure there was, at least on that drawing, there was a garden.
Okay, interesting.
Like a park, well, not, you know what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
An area with greenery. I don't know if that's actually canon or if my memory is bad because I was a literal child at the time. But I remember like poring over the diagrams of these ships because I just thought this looked so interesting.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating like design. Yeah. What it's supposed to have is it's got a forced quantum singularity that it uses as a power source.
Yes.
And that was the reason why the original designer put in the gap in the middle of the ship, because it was basically like, so because it's using like this singularity, the nacelles need to have to see each other.
Mm-hmm.
And basically part of the idea was that because Gene Roddenberry was a big thing of like, no, ships should have 2 nacelles, no more, no less. That they were like, okay, so that means so they were trying to figure out ways of like how what was the word they used? Like when you looked at like World War II like fighter planes, all designed in like separate places, but they all are the basic same idea.
Oh, is it convergent design or something like that?
Yes, like basically that. So like all species would kind of come to the same basic ideas, but just in slightly different formats. Originally, it didn't have the second wing on the bottom either. It just had like a kind of swooping wing. But that was like, oh, hey, you should put one on the bottom as well. And they were like, fuck, that looks great.
I think a later Romulan ship design actually used the curved like one wing part of that.
Yeah, there's some smaller ships that use a kind of similar design, but with only the one wing. Now, apparently, the original design for it actually had the wings vertically. You can see concept art of it. It is an interesting design, but it was one of those where they were like, no, maybe put it sideways, it'll look better. And they did, and they were like, shit, yeah, it does look better. And yeah, it's a really cool thing. There are at least 4 different versions of how the bridge of this thing looks, because they would just make a new one.
See it on, like, oh wait, no, do you see a Dederadex bridge in an episode properly, like a set?
Yeah, several times.
Oh, I was always just thinking of them as being on screen.
Yeah, no, you see it, but you see them a handful of times in Next Generation, and you see them extensively in episodes of Deep Space Nine, like when the Obsidian Order join with fucking the Tal Shiar.
Oh god, the Tal Shiar,
and do a whole thing, and so you see a bridge pretty clearly there. So yeah, there's a few ships like that where every time they show up, they have a different bridge design because they would just remake it whenever they needed it.
Starfleet ships have the same problem. It's not an alien ship only thing.
Yeah, some do like that. I think Excelsiors and Mirandas are particularly bad for that. I think that's just because they're ships that show up repeatedly. So
yep.
There was 2 different studio models of the Romulan Warbird, which is why sometimes they look more green and sometimes look more blue-grey, because there are just simply 2 ships that they used.
Fair enough then, okay. I
think
also, the green is the one that sticks out to me.
Yeah. One thing that I often forget about is that there is like a really subtle wing pattern actually on the big wings as well, to tie into the old Romulan bird of praise.
Yep.
Which, you know,
it's a it's a really nice homage, while, like you said, being very subtle.
Yeah, like you don't necessarily notice it. And by the nature of Romulans, like, we don't know like everything about it. Like, obviously, you know, a lot gets done in like technical manuals and stuff, but a lot of stuff is they keep it quite secret about how these things work. But the one thing we know is that these are like outrageously powerful ships. Yep. Like, they're huge and they're not something to be trifled with.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just kind of, they're just a cool design. I do like, it's one that I didn't really think about like too much when putting it in the list. Like, it went on because it's an iconic ship, but like,
well, let's be honest, it went in because we're like, we need to add some alien ships to this.
There is that as well. But then, like, the more people were talking about it, I was like, you know, actually, yeah, it's a really cool design for a ship. Like, the big beak at the front and everything.
I was about to say, there is a visible fucking beak on that ship, and yet it doesn't look cheesy.
Yeah, it doesn't have that, oh, it was just made to look like a bird. It just has birdness about it.
Yeah.
Which is just a nice subtle piece of design, and like the whole having a huge gap in the center of it where, you know, for the engines to see each other, which apparently the designer of it was like, yeah, other people who made Romulan ships just ignored that thing that I made up when they'd make other Romulan ships. But I wish other people had kept that, because I think it's a really interesting quirk to Romulan design.
At the same time, at the very least, Romulan ships have always kept the bird of prey style design language, where everything has like swooping, curling wing kind of looks to it. Even the Scimitar does. Yeah. And the Scimitar's a weird fucking ship.
It is. Fucking huge as well.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a cool ship. I don't actually have much to say about it, but it is just cool.
No, that's the thing. There isn't much to say about it because everything's so like, oh, Romulan spooky. It's just good. It's a solid design. It was a legit threat in the shows. A ship of that size having a cloaking device is kind of frightening when you think about where it could just suddenly pop up.
Like, I think that's one of the reasons why they have the weird forced quantum singularity thing, because it's easier for them to cloak.
Yeah, something like that, probably.
But yeah.
No, honestly, great stuff.
Yeah.
Can't say a bad word about it.
So of the two studio models, the second one of them, which is the one that's, I think is the one that's more green.
Okay.
Actually, it might be the other way around. Doesn't matter. But one of them is owned by the same guy that owns Voyager.
This is why I want to at least maybe get in contact. Can we come and see your collection? Because holy fucking shit, I did.
He bought that one for $36,000, by the way. The fate of the first one was unknown for a really long time. No one actually knew where it was. But it later showed up in the hands of the same guy who currently owns the Sovereign class model. So
nice.
who's another big collector of it. I will say, if I ever lose my senses and become a billionaire, before I am rightfully torn apart by the mob for being a leech on society.
Or me.
You can be a mob. You can be a one-person mob.
I am a one-person mob.
Then what I would get into is collecting the original Star Wars prop ships.
Yeah.
That would be one of the dream things to own. To own an actual ship. Honestly, even if I was own something that no one gives a shit about, I don't know, a fucking... What's a ship that had a physical model no one cares about? The ship that I forget the name of it, that Scotty crash landed on the Dyson Sphere in, which is actually
fuck yeah, I can't remember the name of that either.
Which is actually the shuttle from the motion picture, but with some nacelles stuck to it.
Correct.
Even if it was that, I'd fucking love it. That would be my prized possession if I was ever to get
Fun fact: that episode makes me cry.
It's bad that I can't remember the name of the ship because I literally watched it 4 days ago.
I am looking right now. I'm finding the episode.
It's a really nice episode.
It really is.
Star Trek, especially that era, did a very good job of managing its nostalgia, I felt.
The ultimate by the way.
Cool. The ultimate example of that being, of course, Trials and Tribulations.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favourite episodes of Star Trek.
Alright. The bit that makes me cry in that episode is that Scotty feels completely out of place in this totally new era to him of engineering and starships. And he finds a bottle of actual booze. And then
which he asks Data what it is, and Data just sniffs it, looks at it and goes, "It is green."
Yeah. And goes to the holodeck and has it make a recreation of the bridge of the original Enterprise. Of the original series Enterprise, I should say, the Constitution class. And just sits there, and I was in tears. Oh, good shit.
Yeah, no, it's a nice episode, and the conversation he has with Picard there is really nice.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite conversations Picard has with anyone. Yeah. It's really good. And it turns out that the bottle of green is actually Aldebaran whiskey and it belongs to Picard.
Yeah, because he's oh yeah, be careful, Picard. It's got a real kick, and Picard just takes a fucking shot of it.
Fucking skulls it. It's Jesus, dude.
Yeah, it's of course I know it. I was the one who gave it to Guinan. No. Yeah, no. So it's a great episode. And yeah, the tour. I think it's really nice there because it establishes that though the Enterprise is an important ship, Picard doesn't consider it it's not his. It's his ship, but he still has the fondness for the Stargazer,
which is
because that was his
shit.
Which is a hunk of shit, and he knows it, but it was his first ship, and so he still has nostalgia for it. The Enterprise is a ship he is the captain of, but his ship is the Stargazer.
Yeah.
And that just adds, I don't know, making the Enterprise not be the most important thing in the world for that conversation.
Yeah.
Is nice. It makes the world.
When you think about it that way, I don't think the Enterprise D is the most important ship in that conversation.
No, it's not.
The Connie might be for Scotty, because that's what he connects with, the TOS bridge more than he probably did the motion picture bridge,
Yeah, it's the original one, not even the A. It's the original one.
It's the NCC 1701.
And yeah, that's...
Feelings, everyone.
I already
Feelings.
forget how we got onto this conversation because we're about to move on to the next one.
That's fine, move us on.
Okay, so the very next thing we have in the list, and this is the number 2 ship in the whole of Star Trek. No surprises here. It's the Galaxy class, which got 20
surprises here. It's number 2.
Yeah, that it got that high. I think that's, understandable.
2,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if it had got like highest. Like,
yeah, I thought it would, honestly,
and I wouldn't blame it because like it's not my. It's a weird. I go in and out of like really liking it and like kind of not liking it, but it is iconic.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the, like, I've said this before in a lot of things, I'm not a huge fan of the design of the ship, but it's the Enterprise fucking D.
Yeah.
It's Picard's Enterprise. He gets two different classes of Enterprise, and both of them he makes his.
Yeah, and
one of them's clearly better than the other, but the Galaxy's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, the Galaxy class is one of the hugest ships. I think it might be, the largest Federation ship in the Prime timeline. Yeah, I can't remember. Is it like the Vengeance or something from Into Darkness? That fucking huge ass ship.
Don't talk to me.
I don't know if
Just
that's bigger.
Don't talk to me about
that. No, it's terrible.
It's terrible. It looks like a really shitty Excelsior. Anyway.
Yeah. The Galaxy is fucking huge. It's got 42 decks. It can hold a maximum crew capacity of 15,000 people.
Which is dumb.
Now, it's not the longest in the world. It's 641 meters, but its interior volume is fucking massive because the source is quite thick, the secondary hull's big. You could fit, in terms of volume...
The neck is big.
Yeah, you could fit the entirety of the Enterprise E in terms of volume inside the saucer section of the Enterprise D.
Yeah. This was Gene Roddenberry wanting that, like, city in space with like teachers and children and families and oh god.
Yeah, it was originally going to have dolphins in it, like for navigation and everything.
I was hoping you'd mention the dolphins.
It was just dolphins were just a big thing in like the late 80s, early 90s. We were big into dolphins. That's
how's Sequest going?
I still keep meaning to watch the last half of the last season. We need to do an episode on a Sequest episode. I just need to...
Fuck, okay.
I legit like Sequest. Like,
I think...
No irony. It's like...
Anyway,
honestly...
Tangent.
Okay.
Christ, if I'm the one pulling us out of those things, it's a bad day.
Yeah, it's bad, isn't it?
Galaxy, great, love it. Saucer separation, I still find dumb. It's the first time you see it happen, it's really cheesy with the music, but still.
So, some interesting things about it. There was originally only supposed to be canonically about, like, 6 of them. It was mentioned. So there wasn't supposed to be many of them. But, obviously, by the Dominion War, that had changed because there's, like, at least one shot in DS9 where you can see 10 of them at once.
Good.
And, of course, one of those isn't the Enterprise. So, we know that there's a lot more than that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually, the fact that they're saying, like, oh, maybe about 6 of them were built makes sense as well, judging by the fucking size of the thing, the amount of materials required.
Yeah, they were not supposed to be just something to be thrown around. They weren't a workhorse. They were these grand things. I have a quote later that I'll read that's very, very...
They feel like, I'm not going to lie, they feel like the Federation waving their dick around a little bit.
Kinda, yeah. I think the design is very... you look at it now, it's very, very, like, late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, totally.
Like the kind of smoothness of everything. Like, it... You can kind of see a lot of the design sensibilities of...
If you're going to talk about physical models, I just want to talk about this for a second when we get to it, but there's one with a really, really thick rim of the saucer and one with a much thinner one.
Okay, well, we'll talk about this then, because I've got all the notes for this. So, there were 3 studio models for the Enterprise D. And for Galaxy classes in general, but they were, it was mostly used for the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
There was a 6-foot model. That was the full-size one. There was a full 6-foot model. There was a smaller 4-foot model and an even smaller 2-foot model. The 2-foot model being used primarily for like long shots and things.
Right.
And the 6-foot model was the huge, super detailed one, and it had a detachable saucer. So that one was super heavy and complicated to work with because each section had to, because basically the secondary hull and the saucer section both had to have their own internal framework and electronics because they could separate.
Right, yeah.
So apparently it was a fucking nightmare, and for something that was only used in a handful of episodes as well.
Yeah.
Now, between seasons 2 and 3, they realised that they could really do with a model that sort of could do both jobs at once. And so it was smaller, so it was easier to work with, because the big model took like 6 people to move. Like, it was so big, it was just a pain in the ass to work with.
You can find behind-the-scenes photos online of people having to try and work around it and stuff, and it's nuts.
Yeah, so they made a 4-foot one, which sort of, basically after they built it, became the one that they used for basically everything. The only times that the other ones were used were for super specific shots or in stock footage. That was the only time you saw them.
Right.
You can tell the 4-foot one a mile away because of 2 factors, which is one, that they made the texturing on it more defined. Because they felt that you couldn't grasp the scale of it quite so much with the smooth hull.
Interesting.
I personally disagree with that. I think that the smoother one looks bigger.
Okay.
But that's just me.
That's totally a personal preference.
That's a subjective thing. I don't think the more prominent hull panels do anything to make it look bigger.
I was going to say that I don't think that would affect scale because it just makes it look like it has bigger panels.
Yeah, which to me makes it look smaller because the panels are more prominent. But it doesn't matter.
Literally does not matter. Yes.
But the main difference that you can tell is that the saucer section, the midpoint of it, is thicker, and that was done mostly because they realised that on the original model there is nowhere for 10 forward to exist.
Okay, controversial take. I don't give a fuck. The thick rim looks kind of dopey.
It has been said. I think it's said specifically by the people on set. They said that a lot of them, even though it was a nightmare to work with, they preferred the other model because the 4-foot model had a bit more of a squat bulldog kind of look to it, which not everyone liked as much. And I get that. I I do kind of agree with that. I do think that the bigger model looks better.
Yeah, the whatever one they used in Generations is the best looking one.
That was the big one, yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking gorgeous in that movie.
It was just refilmed but with nicer effects, and some shots were literally just the same shots but just fancied up from the show.
Yeah, honestly, like the fact that you can't see 10 forward, I'm like,
Yeah,
that's such a minute detail that they could retcon easily by saying that the windows you see in 10 forward are actually like displays.
Yeah, they're not real windows. You could use ways and means to get around it. That was also the 4-foot one was also the one that was altered to be the 3 nacelled fancy version from All Good Things as well. So,
just
also
actually,
whilst we're speaking about
the 3 nacelled version, the Galaxy X as it became known because it's the most 90s to 2000s thing ever, also had a huge phaser cannon under in the lower part of the saucer section.
Yes.
And these little antennae things?
Yeah, they're phaser cannons, if I remember rightly.
Are those phaser cannons as well, right?
Yeah, it's basically all the weapons. If you want a really completely pointless little fact about that version, the extra chunk of the hull that got added at the back so that it could have the 3rd nacelle doesn't have interior lighting for the windows. So if you notice in the show, you'll see that they don't have lit up windows. Brilliant. That's actually one of the things of the small 2-foot model. I think the lower hull doesn't have lights in it, but what it did have was reflective panels where the lights were, so they could shine lights on it.
So you could kind of trick it a wee bit.
Yeah, so
I love stuff like that.
They did a lot of stuff. One other thing about the models, for the saucer that crashes in Generations, that was a specially made model.
Yeah, That was huge. I remember I had the behind the scenes on that.
Yeah, it's a 12-foot saucer.
And it looks incredible.
Massive. There's a picture of like one of the crew standing next to it, and it looks like they're standing next to a giant fish they've caught. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I watched... I don't know how I got it, honestly. But it was a VHS. I think it must have been like the sort of like teaser press kit style stuff they used to do, where it was like, oh, it's behind the scenes info and like interviews with the actors and stuff. And I watched that VHS so much as a kid that I wore it out.
Yeah.
And it had the entire scene of them behind the scenes filming the saucer crashing.
Oh, rad.
Like, including them setting up the stage and, like, spraying back on some colour to bits and everything. It's awesome. That model, I wish... If I had one thing in the world I could wish for, it would be the rest of the hull of that Enterprise to that scale of the saucer.
Yes.
It would look incredible.
I mean, the whole scene of the Enterprise D's saucer section crashing on the planet looks so fucking good because of that model work.
Yeah.
Like, that...
I need to see if I can find those clips on YouTube. They're so good.
Generations has a lot of problems, but, like, that shot is fucking...
The model work is all good.
That's great. So just to get back to some of the things, I also point out that the Galaxy class is officially stated to be an exploration ship, but in a lot of like later works, it often gets referred to as a battleship, and I'm wondering if that's because you see a lot of them in the Dominion War, and from what I understand, canonically speaking, the versions of Galaxy classes that you see during the Dominion War have been radically refitted to basically be warships, and they're fucking dangerous because
that's interesting.
Because the Galaxy class was a huge ass ship with really good shields.
See, I always pictured it just being, it then proved itself in the Dominion War as being a really fucking good battleship because it's a huge, big ship with a formidable weaponry on it.
Yeah, basically.
But maybe it's, as you said, canonically it's a refit type deal. Okay.
Yeah, like outfitted with more phaser arrays. It's not carrying anywhere near the same amount of crew because it's not carrying families and stuff.
And it's not carrying civilians. God, I don't like that at all in a Starfleet ship.
Yeah, when you see it feels bad when you see Galaxy classes getting minced left, right, and center in like the Dominion War. If you think about them being like the Enterprise, but they're not. Don't worry.
Well,
canonically,
the bit that just jumped out at me there is it in Q Who where a section of the ship gets removed by the Borg.
Yes, which if you look on Memory Alpha, I put it up on Twitter as well. There is a picture.
About it, yeah.
The model of that section that gets pulled out there's actually like photographs of that model, and it's really fun.
But yeah, that's a ship with civilians on it. Like, holy shit, that's bad.
Yeah, when you think bad things are happening to the Enterprise, or when like time travel happens and the Enterprise gets destroyed, think about how many fucking families are on board that ship. Yeah. Oh Jesus.
Do you remember the fucking the escape pod sequence in Generations? Families everywhere. It's like this shouldn't happen.
Yeah, no,
Gene, I'm sorry, it's not a good idea.
Like, I get where they're going, what they're going for, but like, it's understandable that they dialed that back a lot.
Yeah.
So, some interesting things about the design of the Galaxy class is that it was originally based, the design, on a painting by Andrew Probert that he did in 1979 after he'd finished work on art for the motion picture, like the original Star Trek motion picture.
It was that old, holy shit.
Basically, he did a design of the Enterprise of what he would do it as if he'd have been allowed to do it.
Uh-huh.
And basically, it was a constitution that had gone through a wind tunnel. It was just a really smooth version of the Constitution, which is just really... It just looks kind of cool. I actually copied this quote because I thought it was really interesting, which is from an issue of the Next Generation magazine, issue 4 specifically, if you wish to fact-check me, was an interview with Probert. He said, if you look at the original TV Enterprise, it had 2 long cylinders stuck to a stubby cylinder with flat sticks and a neck attached to a saucer. So you have many different design cross-sections. What I've attempted to do is unify the whole ship by giving everything the same sort of ovoid structural feeling. So it's basically an industrial design. After seeing the initial sketches, Gene and the other producers liked my idea. They actually played on it by rationalizing that in the future our art forms will hopefully surpass our concern for technology. Therefore, we could design and build something that we were proud to fly around in. The technology was a given at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, what you were saying earlier about the Galaxy class just being the Federation swinging its dick around, basically it was a flying work of art, which is why it looks so smooth and pretty compared to ships before and after, because it was a time of peace for the Federation, I guess, when that came out.
The bit that I was thinking of is the Enterprise C concept design that he did looks like a Galaxy, but better.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's the thing, what I mentioned earlier, of it being halfway between an Excelsior and
I found
Galaxy.
this 79 image.
Yeah.
That's interesting looking. I totally see where he's coming from with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and like, yeah, I hearing that, it was like, yeah, like really explains like why, because there's that very specific era, because like the starship design for Federation ships has this really like this very distinct lineage, discounting pre stuff that happens canonically earlier but was added later because that screws with it a bit. But you had your 60s era stuff that has this very defined thing, and we really only see the Constitution and technically an Antares in...
Yes, I think there might be some other ones that show up. Like maybe, I can't even remember. But
The
they
only
all
oth-
have very much the same structure.
The only other Federation ship you see that is 100% Federation, Starfleet, more accurately. The only other one you see is it's the Defiant, isn't it? Which is also a Constitution class.
I think it might be, yeah.
The Antares type, I don't think you see them. You don't see them in the original version of the episode. You see them in the special edition versions.
It's a remaster kind of version.
Yeah, and you see them in the animated series. Is where you
of
see
course you do.
the Antares
Also, those
type as well.
remasters pretty good.
Oh yeah. But you don't really see them. But they have this very specific design. And then when they got to the motion picture era, we saw a handful of ships, and they all had this same sort of idea. You know, the blue accents to things like these kind of the red had like entirely gone from the designs.
Yeah.
This kind of very defined look. Mm-hmm. And then ships that are designed to come from that era all have that look. And then you have the next generation era ships, which is basically just the Galaxy and Nebula class, and a handful of other ships that nobody cares about, like the New Orleans class.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame, but
it's really but the only ones that had like proper models that we saw a lot were really the Nebula and the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And then after that, you then got into your Voyager, Deep Space Nine era, and then we got an entire different design language. So I feel like the Galaxy and the Nebula, which is just a kit-bashed Galaxy at the end of the day.
It's
like,
the Miranda version, basically.
Yeah, it makes the Galaxy have this very distinct thing. And I think because it comes from this era of relative peace, I think the idea is that it is this flying work of art is what it's intended to be. And so
that makes sense.
And so it stands out a little bit from the other ships in that regard, I feel.
And I'm glad they stopped doing that, honestly. Not in a bad way. It's like now the Galaxy sits as its own thing.
Yeah, it does.
And other ships went back to being maybe more functional, you know?
Yeah, and I think there's, like, I'm not quite so defined on that as you. I think there's pros and cons to it. But I think the other series that had happened, both DS9 and Voyager, would not have suited that type of design language as much because of what they do. Although I did like how DS9 had a fetish for blowing up Galaxy classes.
Isn't that like the first skirmish with the Dominion? One just gets wrecked by fighters.
I think one gets destroyed in like the first episode as well. Like in my head, before I came back and rewatched them all like a handful of years ago, I had this really distinct memory from watching Deep Space Nine as a child and seeing the Enterprise destroyed. So I was sure the Enterprise D got destroyed in it. And later on, I was like, but then it gets destroyed in Generations, so like, what the fuck? And then I watched it again, and I was like, oh, it's just another Galaxy class, and I was a literal child, and
yeah.
And that's obviously the effect they were trying to have is they blew them up because that was the end. That was like the Enterprise. You knew the Enterprise, so if you saw it get destroyed, you knew it was serious.
It would be the same thing if it would almost have the same effect if it's like they found a Connie somewhere and it got blown up, you'd be like, holy fuck, how... That's a national treasure, that is, you sons of bitches.
I always wished in the big fleet scenes in Deep Space Nine, they threw in I think there is one in there somewhere, but I really wish they threw in, like, more...
Like a refit constitution.
Refit constitutions. Because if the Miranda class is knocking around, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that a refit constitution could be knocking around. But then, admittedly, depending on what source you're going from, the constitution was already, like, quite old by the time Kirk had it, so...
Oh, God, yeah. I guess now, canonically, it is, thanks to Discovery having...
Well, I mean, the thing
is... oh, God, what's his name? Why is it going on my head? Pike.
Well, the thing is, like, Pike was canon before that, and, like, Pike isn't even the first captain of the Enterprise.
No, it's Robert April.
Yeah, it's Robert April. So...
We're fucking nerds, everyone.
A bit of canon first introduced in, I think it's the very last episode of the animated series. And it's since been, like, canonized.
It's carried on. A lot of people... There was a lot of talk over the time when Star Trek 2009 was coming out that Shatner would play Robert April in a bit.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he got all pissy because there was a new Kirk.
Oh, of course he did.
But it wasn't. It was the I'm not mad sort of pissy.
Yeah, I get you. But yeah, anything to add for the Galaxy class? Because again, like, iconic ship.
I'm not the biggest fan of its design. But I totally get it, and it deserves its place in history. In the history of Star Trek.
Yeah, it's
if there's one ship that beats out the Connie in terms of being the Enterprise, it's the Galaxy class.
Yeah, because ultimately it was the Enterprise for much. I mean, the Constitution was the Enterprise in a bunch of movies, sure.
Yeah.
But there was only 3 seasons of the original series.
2 if you only want to watch good episodes.
Yeah. There's like 1 good episode of season 3 or something like that.
I don't even fucking remember. Oh boy.
Yeah. It's the realm of Spock's brain and stuff like that.
Yep.
But, you know, the later, like, I think because there's like 8 seasons of Next Generation, if I remember correctly. And so that's just so long to have something bearing that. And it was only in the 1 movie. But, like, to be fair, the Enterprise kind of wasn't even in every, like, TOS era movie. So
no, we're about to talk about that, in fact.
And yeah, so like, I can understand, like, if people think, when they think Enterprise, they think of the Enterprise D. Admittedly, I probably do. Like, that's the one I grew up with, so that's
I'm not going to give
anyone
shit or be gatekeepy about it. If that's your Enterprise, that's your Enterprise.
Yeah. So yeah, 100% understand that, but we're now at number 1.
I was surprised and delighted.
I was surprised, but I am totally fine with this because it is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite ships in Star Trek. I think it looks fucking great. Number 1, the best ship in all of Star Trek, according to Twitter, so, you know, take that for what it's worth, is the Klingon Bird of Prey, which got a whole 36.9% of the votes. It wasn't even particularly close.
It was yeah.
Also, maths fans at home will notice that the final results add up to 99.9%.
That's Twitter for you.
That's just Twitter because of how it rounds up and rounds down. Don't worry about it.
I am surprised it beat the Galaxy class, but I'm glad
I was as well. But I mean,
I'm really glad it did.
I mean, what did take down the Enterprise D? It was a bird of prey. So the Klingon Bird of Prey, interesting ship.
Is this a Katanga class? Is it called?
No, okay, so...
Or is that the D7?
I think that is the D7 that's called that.
Okay.
So...
That is the D7, sorry, yes it is.
When we say the Bird of Prey, that is a bit of we are kind of like conflating a couple of ships together here, because... So... The Bird of Prey is a ship that, more so than the Defiant, is as big or as powerful as the story needs it to be. Sometimes they are complete pushovers, tiny little old broken ships. Other times they are dangerous, especially in groups, because they have a habit, especially later on, of fielding them as squadrons.
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome, and totally behind that. Now, canonically, there's two main types, which is the cavort and the borel, which were the ones used between the 23rd and 24th century. So they show up a lot in both the next generation sort of era stuff and the TOS movie era as well.
Yep.
The first one appears in Star Trek 3.
The Search for Spock.
The Search for Spock. A movie that I remember being kind of crap, and then I watched it again recently and I was like, actually, I quite like this.
Christopher Lloyd makes a good Klingon villain.
Yeah, he's fun. He's fun. I mean, I hate it how cheaply Kirk's son gets killed.
Oh, it's such a fucking, like, oh, yeah, that's like, oh, he's dead now. It's like, oh.
But, like, because there was, like, whole part about Kirk finding out he has a son in Wrath of Khan is...
And then his son dying in the next movie.
Is like, I really like that, and I thought they could have really done some good things to... Because those movies humanize Kirk so much.
Yeah.
And I think they could have done more with it, and they kind of threw that opportunity away. But whatever, that's not what we're talking about. So these two types of Klingon birds of prey look identical, and they use the same model, but there is an important distinction. One of them, which is the Borel, is a 157.76 meter long scout ship, and cavorts are about 4 times bigger with a 678.36 meter long, and they're cruisers.
For the sake of us talking about this, let's just call them the bird of prey and not think about it too hard.
Because in the shows and movies, they basically hardly ever make a distinction between...
Yeah, they don't.
Sometimes birds of prey are big, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're powerful, sometimes they're not. They very rarely, if ever, make a firm distinction between those two types.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Now, I fucking love the design of the bird of prey. It's fucking great. Would you like to know some fun things about it? The design of it?
Sure.
So, it's called the bird of prey, and it has a feathered
it's got that wing design like the warbird does almost.
Yeah, and of course, in the original series, bird of preys was something that Romulans had. And D7 cruisers were used by both Romulans and Klingons, so we know that sometimes there was a bit of cross-pollination there, and that they did... I think it's like one of them sold the ships to the other, it's like canonical.
Yeah.
But in this, originally, it was supposed to be a Romulan ship. It just was a Romulan ship that was Klingons weren't in the movie originally.
Yeah.
But later on, it was decided actually it'll be Klingons that have stolen a Romulan ship, and then finally it was just a Klingon ship.
It's a Klingon ship. Yeah.
And so that's why it's called a bird of prey and has some design cues from Romulan ships of the wing design. That's why it has it, despite not being one. That's the real world reason why it is. Now, interestingly, it was designed by Nilo Rodis, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, and David Carson. But the final design was picked by Leonard Nimoy. So you've got Leonard Nimoy to thank for how cool the bird of prey looks, because he also put forth a lot of like the design cues of like wanting it to look like a bird. But the most interesting part that I found in relation to its design was that I think it was like in the margins of one of the design, one of the people who was doing the concept art for it drew a big muscular guy flexing. You know, like when they like put their arms down and like curled towards each other.
Oh, right, okay, like in a pose. Yep, okay, yeah. I get it.
That's where the attack mode position for the bird of prey comes from.
That's so good.
That was the influence for it, and that's why it has those like big grill kind of bits around the engine, because they thought it looked like an American football player, so that was like his shoulder pads.
Yeah.
And why it has the jutted out part on the like bridge section on the front, because that's like the grill on an American football player's helmet.
God, it's so good.
Yeah, like I fucking love the design of this thing. It looks so good.
The design is fucking spot on. It's, like when we talk about ships in Star Trek, if we're not talking Federation, we're talking Klingon, and it's going to end up being the bird of prey.
Yeah, like I think the Klingons. The reason why the Klingon bird of prey stuck around for so long is because it's just such a good design. They've had other designs for ships.
It's timeless.
And it's just every other ship has just been an inferior version of the Bird of Prey.
Like, the Negvar was too weird looking.
Yeah, I think it's the Vorcha, which I think is the...
Again, it's...
Like
yeah.
That's like their sort... I guess that's sort of the thing that was supposed to replace the Bird of Prey in terms of, like, it being a sort of... Not the flagship, but a smaller ship that's commonly used.
Yeah.
I think it's a Vorcha. I might be misremembering. It's not real words in a not real thing. It's fine. But
you tell that to Inquisitor Grox that fucking bought me the Klingon Hamlet on Amazon.
Excellent.
I have the book and I'm scared to fucking read it.
I've heard it's a very interesting read. There's a really interesting video on it by the channel Browse Held High, Kyle Calgren.
Okay.
He did a video because he does a lot. He's done a lot of stuff on Shakespeare, and he did one on Klingon,
right, okay.
on like Shakespeare in Klingon, and it's really interesting.
Cool. Anyway, however, this ship though.
Yeah. So thank Leonard Nimoy for it, and the wings moving.
Yep.
One of the reasons you didn't see them do that very often is because the engine, the little motor inside it that did that on the original model, got a bit temperamental, so they didn't like to use it.
Fair.
So that's the reason why you don't see it move very often past the original ones. Also, much like the Warbird, so many different versions of what the bridge of one of these looks like, because they just make a new one whenever they needed it.
Every time it changed.
It just changed. It altered so much.
The one I remember, I will always remember, is the one from Star Trek 4. That was, as a child, the one Star Trek movie I had on VHS. And I watched the shit out of it. The Bird of Prey is the hero ship in that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to love that design. It's so good. I can't even put it into words. It's like, it nails it.
It's alien and like
yet still familiar.
So familiar. Yeah. It's just
you look at it in terms of just like purely design language. You look at it and you go, "That's a warship," or "That's a battleship." You know?
Yeah. It's like it's just got this aggressive stance to it that entirely fits Klingons, like how they're portrayed, and especially
giving that to the Romulans. Yeah, that's not their thing.
Especially like later on how they were used, because once you got to the Dominion War and they started having to deal with the fact that they are kind of small, and they started using them in squadrons, like they were effectively a large fighter, and I love them being used like that. Like you see squadrons of birds of prey going into like attack like Dominion ships. Like that is just a really cool way to use them. I love that they kept them around for so long, and I also love that they acknowledged that they were old and kind of broken by that point as well.
But the Klingon crew, I bet it's one of those ones where it's like, well, they are the Miranda.
They are the Miranda of the Klingon Empire, and
the D7's probably still around somewhere.
I don't think they still use them at that point. I don't think that you ever see them in... Did. Do you ever see a D7 in the Next Gen era at all?
I want to say you might at some point, but probably maybe like once in a background shot or something.
Because I think the only time you ever see them... I think the last time you see them is in the TOS movies. Like, you see...
okay, slight tangent. The model of the D7 they have for the motion picture... Oof, beautiful. Anyway,
I think basically once they got the Bird of Prey in Star Trek 3, they were just like, no, fucking, we're using this for the Klingons all the time. It's so good. And again, it does play on the design cues of the D7, but just
it's still got that like head-mounted torpedo launcher. I don't know what to call it.
Like a chin-mounted one, I guess.
Yeah, chin mount. That's the one. Thank you.
And so good. Also, because we mentioned it earlier. One thing that's really interesting is, would you like to know a ship that was heavily inspired by the Bird of Prey's general stance?
Sure.
The Akira class.
I can totally see it.
Yeah, that's stated that was a huge influence on like how that looked, and it's like, yeah, I get that, because they don't look anything alike, but you could totally see how design influences carry across, and that's really cool.
Just so you know. The Katanga class, the D7, was in 4 episodes of TNG, one of which it was a desktop model, apparently. 3... And 9 episodes of DS9.
Really? I don't
Plus
remember
2
it.
episodes of Voyager.
I'm assuming it was probably like in the background in places.
I'm going to say it probably was, yeah.
But no, that's interesting because I have no recollection of that at all. But cool.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, I think we're more or less.
Yeah,
done.
I'd say we're more or less done. But yeah, the fucking the Bird of Prey is just the shit.
Yeah, I am more than happy having that be number one because, like, the system that we did for like picking what ship is the best and all that, like, because you have the tiered things, it meant some things that I think there's like the Sovereign would have come much higher had it not been in a bracket with other things that people liked better, you know.
Yeah, but honestly, I'm happy giving the spotlight to a ship that's been around for as long as the Bird of Prey fucking has at this point, and it's still a design that people clearly love. Yeah, and I also want to point out, I love the fucking panels on it. And how it's, like, especially the picture we used for the poll, it's slightly discoloured in bits. There's a couple of blue panels. The crown of the barrel around the torpedo launcher is all separate panel pieces. It's so cool. Yeah, it's so damn cool.
Yeah. Solid design. Happy it got first. More because like
solid design could show up anywhere.
Yeah,
in Star Trek at any time period and it'd be fine.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it's one of the things that I'm one of those people that I have real trouble picking my favourite of anything.
Yeah.
So like beyond like my favourite band, which is Streetlight Manifesto. Apart from that, like if you ask me what's your favourite. What's your favourite movie? What's your favourite...
I can't do that stuff.
What's your favourite TV show? What's your favourite food? What's your... anything? I'm terrible. Can never...
Yeah, I can't do it.
Never pick any of them. But when it comes to like Star Trek ships and stuff, like I say Miranda, and like I do play that up for the same reason.
We kind of play up the rivalry, I don't know what to call it, the love-hate relationship for a joke.
But like, I don't know if I was to pick my absolute favourite one, I don't know. But what I do know is that the top 5, if I was to pick them, would definitely include the Sovereign, the Miranda, and the Bird of Prey.
Yeah, like, I think that's fair.
And where they would place in
I'd have the Connie in mine as well, but yeah.
Where they'd place in that would change depending on what mood I was in that day. But yeah.
Oh, I just never tell anyone where they placed. Fuck that.
But that won the poll, and I think that's the whole thing. And like, thank you everyone who voted in the polls, and
we hope you enjoyed this. You fucking weirdos, we love you all.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It was something a bit different. It's going to be a very long one.
Sorry, fuckers, you're in for it this time.
Yeah, I hope that this is something that, you know, is you found entertaining. And like I say, let us know if you like this kind of thing, because we can do more like this in the future. Obviously, next episode, we'll go back to doing what we normally do. And if you really hated it, be nice about hating it, because it will hurt our feelings.
Yeah, just tell us don't do it again, it's fine. Just be like, it's not the best episode you've done or something.
Yeah, but, you know, like, let us know what you think, because, you know, though I think it's always good to expand what a series does.
Yeah.
To not just be a one solid thing, so you can do little things. So if we get bored of just talking about same things over and over again, we can do something like this.
Bullshit movie commentary or something sometime, or, you know, I don't know, whatever. I'm not making any promises we'll do that, by the way, before anyone starts asking.
You never
make that's a whole thing.
Yeah, you never make promises. You just say this is a thing that we might do one day. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so thank you very much for listening. And thank you also to everybody for just listening to this podcast in general. This is the 10th episode of it. We've been wanting to do something akin to this for, like... Didn't we, like, make plans to do something like this, like, a solid year before we recorded the first episode of this?
Yeah.
And we just never...
we're fucking nerds.
And we just never got round to it.
Well, the original idea, I think, or one of our original ideas that ended up becoming this, was that because we kept kind of doing the bit about the Miranda being shit, I wanted to do a live stream where we made a really shit PowerPoint presentation and just talked about ships.
Yeah. I think part of it was that we ended up having conversations like. So basically, the only difference between what you've just spent 2 hours listening to and a normal conversation between Longfang and I is that there was a structure to it.
Yeah. Yeah, people, like, we were talking before the stream started, the recording started about everything, and there was no structure, and it was insanity, but the two of us understood it, so it's fine.
Yeah, so it's been really nice that, like, it's not like we have thousands and thousands of listeners or anything, but like the people that listen to this seem to really like it, and I'm really, really grateful for people putting it, giving us the time, like letting us entertain you. I'm really glad you enjoy this stuff.
Thanks, I'm going to have that fucking Robbie Williams song stuck in my head now.
Oh, wow, even I didn't go there, so, But yeah,
that's
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you sincerely for sticking with this podcast.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, everyone.
It's fun to make, and it gets us watching stuff that we wouldn't necessarily have watched. I would have put off not watching the Quatermass Experiment for another 5 years,
Have watched, or should watch, / subject ourselves to. Like, oof.
And like, I hope we put forth many. We end up doing many more tens of episodes. I don't want to sit there and say hundreds of episodes because
no, that's totally fair. Because there will come a point where we're like, I think we've done this now.
Who knows? I mean, who knows? Like, I can say from experience, you blink and then suddenly you go, I've done 100 episodes of this podcast. What the fuck? Because that happened with my other podcast, the Misanthropod. And that's got like 112 episodes, I think.
I was on one of the more recent episodes, and even I don't fucking remember.
Yeah, that can just happen. So who knows how many we'll do, but I hope you enjoy the ride along the way. Before we sign off and bid you good day, would you like to tell the lovely people at home where you can be found, Longfang?
No, because I'm going to be left alone and hibernating in a cave for the next couple of days.
Okay. Do not try and find Longfang. It's not allowed.
If you awaken the Longfang, you may die.
Do not look at Longfang. Do not.
Do not shake hands with Longfang.
Do not observe. Observation of Longfang is forbidden at this point.
No, I can be found at twitch.tv/Longfang91 and Twitter at Longfang91. Simple.
And I can be found at Wib Does Tweets on Twitter, on the Snipe and Wib channel on YouTube, also at the Wib Does Stuff channel on YouTube. The Misanthropod is my other podcast. I also stream on Twitch at Snipe and Wib on Twitch. There we go.
I think that's everything.
That's everything.
Patreon, but
if you want to give us money, technically the Snipe and Wib Patreon, which is patreon.com/Snipe and Wib, technically
there you go.
The half funds the hosting for this.
No, but it gets some more money in your pocket, which I'm happy about than anything.
I mean, yeah, there's a conversation to be made about maybe making a separate Patreon for this because it's a different entity entirely. But
it's fine.
That is a bridge we'll burn when we come to it. So, I stole that from Snipe. She says that all the time.
Yeah, she's great.
But anyway, goodbye, everybody.
I think the word you're looking for is goodbye or live long and prosper, whichever you prefer in this situation.
Yeah, I was going to do, like, I wanted to say, like, something Star Trek-y to sign off, and my mind went completely blank, and I was like, what's the equivalent of May the Force be with you for Star Trek? And
Jesus Christ, Webb.
And it just blanked in my head. I guess because I've spent 2 hours talking about it, my brain's like, no, you've done too much. You're not allowed to remember any more about Star Trek now.
Webb.
This is it.
I am and always shall be your friend, but man, you're a dumbass sometimes.
There we go. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.